Sammy, you mentioned something. This is getting back to the hockey, and um, you mentioned getting a goal scored on you, and I'm curious about that mental side of goaltending. Um, I don't think guys are bothered by a goal be scoring on them as much as girls, but to me, it's the biggest distraction, which some female athletes never get around. They just can't cope with that.
I would say that it's not, from what I've seen, not necessarily a gender issue. It tends to be the type of personality. So when I'm, seeing young goaltenders, it's hard to, I actually don't know how to coach that out of them. I don't know how, like you can either see a young goalie that is okay with getting scored. I'm okay is the wrong word. Can get past it. Can stop the next puck. And different goalies have different ways of dealing with it. I would always attempt to park it. I would usually watch the replay and see how I got scored on. I'll think about it for a little bit and then be done. Try to stop that next puck. But I would go home and I would journal every goal and what I should have done or what could have happened. I never, I felt like every puck's savable. Something. I was never blaming anybody else. It was always, what could I have done differently? How could I have found the puck? If you're screened, it's still, you have that option. But at certainly teaching and coaching so many young goalies, the goalies that get really angry and frustrated are probably not going to go far. Simply, they just don't have the mentality to be able to park it or get rid of the distraction. And they tend to go downhill pretty quickly in the game. You can see that, and it happens to the best of us at times for sure. But that's hard to coach out, and that's maybe more of a sports psychologist issue at that point. But you can see it in ages 7 and 8, 9. Like, they kind of either have that or they don't. I equate it with one of my best friends, the high jumper. And in high jump and pole vault, you always fail at the end. There's always a failure in every single competition. I mean, unless you break the world record and win the gold medal and decide to stop jumping at that point. But usually you keep going for those higher levels. So there's always failure. And so goaltending is like that. There's always failure. And I wouldn't say it is a gender issue. I haven't seen more or less in boys or girls. Sometimes boys will manifest it in a different way with an actual physical, break your stick over the net or something, or yell at somebody. But that doesn't mean that the girl is not thinking about it in a different way. So we work on at goalie school different ways to deal with it. And we did small area groups with our instructors off the ice this year, where the instructor talked about how they dealt with it at various different times in their career and some suggestions. And then we talked to the kids about, like, how do you deal with it? And just getting that sharing circle of giving them some ways to cope and some ways to distract themselves. For me, it was, I would say to myself, I want to stop the next puck. You don't want to be shy away from that next puck. And it's very natural to think, okay, well, if they just don't come in my end, they won't score on me again. But to want to sort of save it and, make that the challenge, that it's the next puck, not the last puck. But I mean, that's also easier said than done for a lot of people. So I don't know if that necessarily answered your question, Wally, but yeah, I don't think it is a gender issue. I think it's just a personality issue.
Sammy, when you were journaling your goals, did you find a pattern? Did you find a pattern like, you know what, it looks like I wrote down again, short side over my shoulder?
Yeah, for sure. Like, it was just like when I was journaling lifting or throwing or anything I did, it was, I would then go and work on that at practice. In my, it's not like I never had goalie coaches really, so that's what I would be working on, like that slide across to make sure that my glove stays up because I felt like my glove was down, Or in practice, if you're that deflection, like working on different ways to maybe get closer to the player so the deflection is not as far, or finding the puck, or but yes, I would certainly find patterns, and whether it be the night before to the next day's practice, or it be patterned over months or years. We didn't have any video, Peter, so like even with the national team, we rarely did any video that concerned the goalies. It was simply like we would get shown a mass video of maybe the Team Canada goals and us making saves as like a motivation before a game, but it wasn't like the coach was taking us aside and showing us this is where you're scored on. Whereas now goalies, with lots of the various different, if a game is filmed, you can see exactly where the puck went in, and you can like replay it as well. Often I would just try to quickly catch the jumbotron to see if what the jumbotron and what my brain thought were the same thing.
Yeah, I love the idea of the journaling because, again, we're in such an instant world today, right? Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. Looking at the video, you see it, but to be able to actually see the written word that is actually your own written word, right? Getting sort of in your own head in a positive way. I think that can be hugely
and
beneficial.
how you felt it. I also was super negative on myself. I mean, I'm a super positive person, and I think for me, my journaling and my diary entries were my time to be super negative and be done with it. So I wasn't necessarily like I went back when I wrote my book to like look to see. I mean, I would journal about games and stuff like that, and just to go through them. And I realized like I wasn't the most positive person on myself. I was pretty hard on myself. But then I think for me, it was done after I journaled. You know, I didn't sort of replay it all night. I didn't think about it after that. It was just, okay, it's on the paper and now it's done.
Yeah, you got it out. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was either that or my husband, I guess. So.
Yeah, there you go.
How soon did you start journaling, Sammy?
Well, I was lucky to get into track and field at a pretty early age, Wally, and that's where we learned to journal. And the journal was together with the logbook. Like it was kind of all the same thing. So it was, track and field, as you know, so biomechanical that it's the minutia of the details. So really like writing down and making sure that I was capturing everything that the coaches were saying and that I was doing in relation to what the coaches were saying. So I would say I was taught that probably the age of 12 or 13. And now we do the same thing at my goalie school also. So we set aside time. They get a journal and they get a description of every drill as well. So that, whether you're 7 or 17, you're going to journal in different ways. And some of the little kids might just draw a picture of them. They might do a heart if they like to drill, various different things like that. Whereas the older kids will actually write down what they learned in the drill, maybe what they could have gotten better, what they did really well, so that they get used to doing that at a younger age, and hopefully serves them well for not just hockey, but for sort of life in general.
The idea of refocusing, like you had a phrase, it's, what was that, next goal? Next
Yeah, like I wanted to stop the next goal.
Yeah, and
I wanted to stop the next puck. Yeah.
Many years ago, working with Dave King, he would send me to Toronto to take Theory 4 courses because he was too busy coaching. So I would go there and benefit from them and come back and give him a summary of what was done. And I actually put to practice what I picked up in my high school curriculum. And I created a sports psych grade 10, 11, 12 program, 5 hours, 1 week, and then 2 weeks at the 30 phys ed 30 level, which was grade 12. And those were where kids were staying in phys ed that long, they were quite serious and would benefit from it. And I picked up on the formal process of teaching them how to refocus and going through writing down what it is that bothers you the most in a game and prioritizing it, the 2 or 3 things, and then describing your physical symptoms in writing, and then changing it. What are you learning from it? So that you can change it from that negative feeling to a learning opportunity and get the negative emotions out because you've now practically approached it in writing, and then having a cue word, a cue phrase. I put that into practice with the ringette team. I volunteered to coach the senior ringette team in Alberta. It was a senior team that won the national championship. And the only reason I agreed to do it was I could do that sports psychology experiment. The season was long enough. School seasons, football, wrestling, track were too short. And I mean, we won the national championship, and it's called a subjective units of distress scale, a SUD scale. And it's something that worked for me. And I've been trying to advocate it with Girls Hockey Calgary in terms of just go through it once, write down what bothers you, what's your
Well, I think
symptom.
the book that Jordan showed earlier with anxiety, people are something about anxiety and just how prevalent anxiety is in well, even in elementary school, he was saying, so I think something like that would be so valuable because they don't have a way to get rid of it or to park it or where it should go.
Yeah.
They just feel it.